And we are live. We are live. We are live. I am back feeling better than I was yesterday, which is why my energy was so low. And I'm back with a special guest who makes it 1 year appearance every year.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Brandon Kane of the Hawks. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Good to be back in your house, Jose. Always good to chop it up with you, my man.
So let's start with the news of the day. We were talking about before we started this, and that is the Uchenna Nwosu review. For those of you who missed the game, he got rolled up on by guard White Teller, who was aiming for the hip, but got the leg. He was aiming for the hip, accidentally chipped Uchenna's leg. Sorry about my dogs in the.
You're good.
In the background, but dogs are gonna be dogs.
Yes, they are.
But what did you think of that play?
On the Uchenna?
Dirty play. Not dirty play. Dirty play.
Oh no, that's I thought it was a very dirty play. I think that the guard was slow to get to Uchenna, and Uchenna got up too fast, and he panicked, and so he decided to dive at his legs. The intention on that's not necessarily to dive at the guy's legs. You're going to try to meet him high, but I think he was panicking, and in panicking, he did a dirty play. I mean, it's a preseason game, and you're doing something like that. It's just kind of like, really, in a preseason game? You know, I mean, you could end a guy's career with that kind of hit, and it has ended a guy's careers with that kind of hit. He's engaged already high. There's a penalty called on the play too, by the way. So officials called the penalty. You're not supposed to engage with a guy low when a guy's engaged high, and that's what he did. Is he went low on him when he's high because the guy can't protect himself. He's engaged. His hands are engaged. He can't protect his feet. And so horribly, in my opinion, dirty play. And good to hear that Uchenna's not going to have a season-ending injury with this, because sometimes that can come back around and you come to find out a day or two later that there is a torn ACL.
Right. You will be out somewhere between.
Sorry, what'd you say?
He will be out somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks. And because of that, the Seahawks traded for a defensive end from the Bears. I'm not gonna try to pronounce his first name.
Travis
Gibson.
Yeah.
Of the Bears.
That's right.
Of the Jaguars, excuse me.
And the Bears.
He played Jaguars. The Jaguars.
He was Bears before Jaguars.
Yes, but we traded with the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I was just seeing a couple clips of him. Apparently, these dogs just won't shut up.
I was wondering, did you guys got a delivery coming in, or is it just somebody's outside just giving them stuff for the window?
Just somebody's outside giving them stuff out the window. I apologize.
No, you're good.
I wanted to close the door behind me, but if I did, it would have been 85 degrees in this room.
It's hot down here in Southern California. Yeah. No, it's warm. I understand. Definitely got to keep that breeze.
Yeah. So, I was looking up a clip. We did actually play against Mr. Gibson last preseason because there was a clip of Drew Lock. And Drew Lock, thank God, it's no longer on this team.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
must have been last preseason, and he was giving Charles Cross a very hard time
Mm.
on what I saw on that tape. So looks like he could be a decent pass rusher, but from what I'm hearing, not a great run defender.
Mm.
So basically, Daryl Taylor till final year.
Could be on that one. Don't know a lot about him so far because the signing did just kind of come down, but he does seem a pass rush specialist. Quiet year last year, only played 8 games. Had 1 year where he had some really good production in that edge role, but just as you said earlier, probably got to fill in until Uchenna can get back to rolling. Make sure you've got the depth that you want to have there if there is another injury in addition in the first couple of weeks. So it's an insurance thing, I'm sure, as much as anything else here from John's perspective.
Now, before we continue into the future, let's go back to the past because I've been trying to get you on this channel since mid-January. Why? Mid-January? What? That's when they fired Pete Carroll, and you know the history here. Me and Pete Carroll. Brandon, you know it. You know it, and you know it well, and you know how much of a Pete advocate / fanboy I was, and still am. But at the end of the day, I knew it was time for him to go. You saw the video I made at the end of last season. You actually left a comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
Oh, yeah.
And we actually agreed that it was his time to go. And to be honest, when we were first interviewing people, I wanted either Ben Johnson or the Houston Texans offensive coordinator, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted an offensive mind. I did not want Dan Quinn, especially not after that Cowboys playoff game. Yikes, that was a disaster for Dan Quinn and his hiring prospects. Although he did get a job with the Commanders, so it couldn't have been all that bad, I guess.
Yeah, they sort of settled on him, I think. They probably had other options they were looking at, and they just kind of came around to Dan.
They wanted Mike McDonald.
Yeah,
Allegedly.
they did.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
We spent a little more money than they were willing to, and he wanted to come here, I think, a little bit more. So ended up winning out.
Which is crazy because his wife is a former Commander cheerleader, from what I heard. I could be mistaken, but I don't think I am.
Seattle must have just looked like a much better landing spot for him. I think he had a bit of a pick on this. So maybe a little bit about the talent that we had and where the team was ready to go, and that factoring into it as well. If you're going to be a new coach, you want to go to the most talented team, not the one that you probably have to rebuild from scratch, which is a little bit of what Washington probably needs at this point.
Right. So first off, what did you think of the timing of Pete Carroll, I should say, getting fired?
I think the timing was right. I think that there's arguments to be made that 2 years ago you could have moved on from Pete Carroll and said, look, Super Bowl's 7 years ago. We haven't done a lot since then. I was okay with him giving the extra 2 years here to see if he could kind of ride it. But then that does mean that you've given a lot of time. And most coaches in the NFL don't get this a lot of time, don't get to go through things 2-3 different times over as far as the reset process goes, especially in regards to his defense, and still come out the other side of it not working and then still get to continue to keep their job. I think that it just Coach Carroll's a coach that has still got some quality in this league, and he could still, as I've said, be a good coach in this league and still coach in this league. But it does come down to him crossing a bridge that he has refused to the bitter end not to cross, and that is to update his understanding of what he needs to do on both sides of the ball to go win football games. And he doesn't want to do that, and it's very hard-lined in his approach. It's very simplified in his approach. In many ways, it holds back the offense and defense at times from doing the things that most other teams are utilizing, especially from a schematic standpoint. And it just got to be too much. But it was definitely high time. The change had to be made. It wasn't going to fix itself. That's the thing with this. And he wasn't going to take the steps to fix it from a purposeful standpoint. He's just going to hope it kind of cylindrically fixed itself. And that was never going to be the case.
What did you make of the comments he made where in his last press conference where he told John Snyder, you wanted it to be your team. Well, now it's I want you, or something along.
Kind of. I mean, you sort of put that a little more extreme than he put it in the press conference.
Well, what's the quote?
It's to him now, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with it. And I'm excited about it. It was more about him being.
I didn't mean.
Well, you said. I mean, you kind of said it like he was like throwing it shade at him with it, where he's being more encouraging to him in the moment of like, I'm excited to see what you can do with it. And look, he was salty in the press conference, but he also said that the decision didn't come from football people, right? So why would he be salty towards John Schneider if John Schneider wasn't the non-football person that forced him out?
That's true.
So I mean, I think he was just salty in general. I don't think it was directed over at John. And, quite frankly, when it comes down to it, John's been better at his job than Pete's been better at his job recently.
Yeah.
And like the proof on this is who's got fired and who's still staying. Right. And if John's bad at his job, then why didn't they push him out too? If it wasn't that Pete was at the center of some of those silly trades, like the Jamal Adams trade, or like some of those desperate trades coming down to the training camp wire when he's coming to John saying, I need more. Like if those were John, then John would be out, but he's not, he's still here. And I think that's more. I think it's more of an example of that was more of Pete. I think the stuff with Pete went beyond schematics and it went to some of the off the field decisions in addition to this, Jose, so that it wasn't just him being held back there. It was also, and you're coming into your GM and you're kind of upending your general manager. You're kind of now throwing the monkey wrench on top of your general manager rather than letting him operate fully unhindered. And I think that when he said, a little bit of point of now it's on you a little bit, there's more of a reference to that. I'm not as much in here now able to be oversight on you. Because remember with this, Jose, it was the weird dynamic here where Pete was John's boss. John was not Pete's boss. And that's not how every other general manager situation is in the league. And just imagine trying to do your job and somebody comes in every once in a while and says, no, do this. But then you're on the hook for his decision to your job, right? John goes out there and makes a desperate trade to Jamal. Everyone goes, hey, Jamal, look at how John crapped the bed here. Look at this stupid trade he made. Oh, so desperate. Meanwhile, he's got to just sit over there and be quiet because Pete's the one that drove him to do it potentially. I think and I'm doing math here, Jose, I am for sure, but I think it's pretty on button math here, being that was a part of this process coming into play on it. And yeah, I think that's a bit of why he's also not here in addition to the schematic stuff is some of those decisions that came down the pike.
Okay, and that's right. You wanted the Seahawks to bring in Harbaugh to begin with.
Indeed.
Correct?
Yeah. I did.
I just remembered, like, literally while you were talking.
Harbaugh's going to do a good job with the Chargers. He's going to turn that organization around. He's going to turn them into a winner, like he's turned every single organization that he's gone to into a winner. Seahawks fans don't like Harbaugh because he's got a punchable face, and I understand that his personality rubs some people the wrong way. But I don't really care about that stuff. I care about winning football games and getting championships stacked up. And you take me with a guy that I know every stop he's created a winner, and most of those stops, Jose, occurred where those weren't set up and they weren't winning when he got there. He didn't walk into Stanford and they were a juggernaut. He didn't walk into there and Michigan was at the heights of that program. He didn't walk into San Francisco and they were going to Super Bowls year after year after year. All of those programs were in bad shape and he lifted them up. And all of those programs are going to be worse after he left, in addition to that. All of them. So it's one that I get sort of, sometimes people will laugh. I know you're not doing this, but I mean, people chuckle a little bit about the Harbaugh suggestion, but I go, hey, what's to laugh at? The guy's coming off a national title. He was an inch away from winning a Super Bowl here when he was at his one time having an opportunity to be a head coach at the pro level. I get the punchable face stuff, but that stuff should not matter too much as the bottom line, which is winning football games and getting Super Bowl championships, you know?
With that, we agree.
Yeah. So yeah, I still maintain. I still I'm happy. I love Mike McDonald as a head coach in that hiring. Don't get me wrong there, but I still do say I'm not backtracking on my having number one as Harbaugh there. I still think that was would have been a smart hire, a smart decision if they'd went that route.
So, who do you think are the key players for the Seahawks? Not only for this upcoming season, but for, let's say, 2 years down the line.
It gets hard on offense to necessarily say that because I think that there's a lot of, if we're talking out 2 years down the line thing, there's a lot of question marks out there. Tyler Lockett, do the Seahawks re-up back with DK Metcalf a year from now? Or is the price tag going to go too high on that one? What are they going to do with Geno Smith? Is the team going to be willing to pay Kenneth Walker after his third year, even though he's at the running back position? I might argue that really I've got Charles Cross as your only guy on offense that I could really point to with any kind of certainty to know that this is a guy 2 years from now that is part of the process. Hopefully a Haynes, sure. But even, Lucas, you don't know with his knee. Tight end position's a bit of a question mark there. So I think I'm a little bit more when it comes to the offense. If we're talking 2 years out, it's a little harder to say. Certainly DK, Kenneth Walker, Geno Smith are the three guys this year offensively that I think are very important to us becoming a contender this year. But you're talking about long-term on it, I think the team has got a little bit of a wait and see approach on the offensive side of the ball with those guys. And I don't have a really good feel for yet. John might come up with Kenneth Walker and be like, I don't want to pay running backs. I'll take him in the second round, but I don't want to pay him when they come up for their contract. I don't believe in that. So I'll just go back and draft another one in the second round, let Kenneth Walker move on. It's hard to see where he's going to play on that. I don't know, especially as we talked about just a second ago, he is running more unhindered than ever before, right? He doesn't have a peak saying, sign that Chris Carson guy. And John's going, well, he's got the neck thing. Yeah, but he's been a great soldier for us. He's earned the contract. Yeah, he's got this neck thing, though, that could bust at any second. Sign him to the contract. So now he gets to go in here. We're going to learn about his approach to these positional groups and what he's willing to pay and what he's not willing to pay. Defensively, a little bit easier. I think Woolen and Witherspoon are two guys that if they can fit into what I think they can be, which is man coverage corners that can lock down and be island kind of corners in what they do. Witherspoon being able to be kind of a jack of all trades guy that you can move all over the place. If they can do that, that helps to really free up the rest of the defense, I think, for McDonald to be able to run all of the creative stuff he wants to run up front, stack boxes, blitzes. When he wants to do that, he can trust those guys on the outside. I think those guys long-term, in addition to being this year and long-term, are two of the real big important pieces. Obviously, Byron Murphy is going to be a big part of that in a couple of years from now. You hope he's dominant at that point. But I look at what those guys can do in the secondary and how this defense, at the heart of this defense is we want to have some corners on the outside that can hold up so that we can get wild and crazy, buck wild right up around the line of scrimmage and really have some fun with some games out there.
It's funny that you brought up Tariq Woolen because last night Brendan Nelson was live, and he was saying, I don't know if the Seahawks should extend Tariq, depending on his price, if he's going to want to be paid as a top corner, because then I won't be able to extend certain other players. I can't remember who he brought up, but this is just what he was saying last night on his live live stream. And I agree more with Brendan. Excuse me, I can't even speak right today.
Mm-hmm.
And that line of thinking, that because with Tariq, this is his, in my opinion, this is his make or break year if you want to top 10, top 5 cornerback contract. If you want to be paid like Jalen Ramsey, like the Jets are probably going to pay Sauce Gardner, like give me another top corner that's been paid. AJ Terrell.
Mm-hmm.
If he wants that kind of contract, he is going to have to really ball out this year.
I think he is. I think that when it comes to having the money or not having the money to pay for him, I think that there is money to pay if the performance is there and right. And you had Tariq Woolen in a system last that was asking him to play a lot of zone coverage. I don't think we're going to be asking him to play as much zone coverage. He's going to travel with the man. This is going to make him more effective as a player. Obviously, the tackling is the big question mark with him, and I think could very well end up lowering down some of that potential price tag down the road if it is something that he can't get more on lockdown this year. I think he had a very good coverage year last year. I think that there's a little bit of a narrative out there with Tariq that he somehow had this bad season last year, and it just doesn't really track to me, in my opinion. He still was very strong in coverage. He had a couple of interceptions went through his hands, and I think that this is the funny part about narrative on this, Jose, is that he makes those 3 other interceptions that slip through his hands. He has 5-6 interceptions at the year, and everybody's like, "Oh, it was a great year." The tackling could have been exactly the same, but he gets those couple of interceptions, and everybody would be like, "Oh, no, it was another," just followed up with a solid second season after that first year where he lit it up. So I'm a little bit different. My outlook of people with how they look at Tariq with this. I think he had a good coverage year last year. Great fit into this defense. As I was saying prior, there's a heavy draw in this defense when you look at it prior through generations of other coaches have utilized it, that when they have a lockdown cover corner on the edge, when they have a guy that can be the island corner, that they keep those guys. So that's a little bit of if we go to the anti-proof of that to say, well, he's not going to get signed. So, well, what are we basing that on? We don't have money. Well, how do we know we're not going to have money? There's a ton of flexibility to next off seasons for them to sign whoever they want and move money around wherever they want. And they have about the 5th most amount of cap space in 2026. So I don't quite get the argument of we don't have the money to spend on that side of it. You can make the money to spend, and this is a high priority position for within this system as well. So for me, it seems a little counterintuitive to say that it's not likely to happen when history for this scheme and system, going back from the Ryan brothers, going back to their father, going to Wink Martindale, looking at the corners they had in Baltimore through those years, Jose, Marlon Humphrey, did they let him go when they had Marlon Humphrey in a good corner? Did they let him walk out the door? Jimmy Smith before that, they're going to hold on to those guys. Antonio Cromartie, Darrelle Revis playing in the Ryan system. Did they let both of those guys go, or did they pay? Did they pay both of those 2 guys? They paid them. So it's the. Sorry, go ahead, Jose. I'm sorry.
They paid it.
They did. I think that there's room to do this. He's got to prove some stuff, Jose. He's got to get better at tackling. But if he goes out and has 7 or 8 interceptions this year and he's still not a great tackler, they're still going to probably pay him. It'll probably go that way. And I'm making a guess here, but I'm basing it as I can, not on my emotions of it, but on past history of how other teams operating within this defensive system have decided to pay out to it, or what those defensive coordinators have decided is the priority. I think more of the priority you'll find in the system might be leaning to some of those corners rather than maybe putting as much investment into, let's say, defensive line as we go into the future, right? You pull from one, you pull from other. You take a Draymond Jones out of the mix, you flip Draymond Jones's money to a Tariq Woolen kind of thing.
Oh,
Something like that.
believe me, I would be happy to see Draymond go. I would be ecstatic.
Well, after this year, that's where you get in. You couldn't do it this year. But after next year, you can save a substantial amount of money if they want to do that. And then, like I said, you can just flip the money back over to him if you really wanted to.
If you gave me a genie and in a magic lamp, one of my 3 wishes would be, can we cut Draymond Jones tomorrow and keep the money?
Well, I mean, thing to remember with Draymond Jones last year, though, Jose, is he had to be a good soldier, right, man? Like, do you want to punish the guy for doing right by the team?
That's me. That's me being over dramatic.
I mean, I get that he didn't have a great year, so I'm not saying he had a really good year, but I think his year got depressed because you kicked him to the edge, right? You said you got to play outside because we don't have Darryl Taylor who can run defend. We don't have Frank Clark that can run defend. We lost Uchenna Nwosu for the year. We have nobody that can run defend out on the edge, Draymond. So rather than operate inside where you've been at your most effective throughout your entire career, we're going to put you out there and have you do that. And that's where, to me, I have a little more, I'm a little bit like, well, you mean, you can't punish the guy then for doing that to him. I mean, you brought him in to be a DT, you know?
Yeah, but even when he was the DT against, when we played Arizona, he was playing DT and he had a guy running faster when he was making the right reads and he just wouldn't go after the tackle. And I'm sitting here looking like, what are you looking at? Jump on the guy's head. Try to bring him down. It's James.
Well, was he operating off the edge on that snap, or was he operating?
No, he was off the inside.
And
I'm like, it's James Conner. It's not Derrick Henry. Please try to make the tackle.
He can be a tough guy to bring down. That James Conner's a big boy.
Funny story. I actually told Pete Carroll the Seahawks should have drafted James Conner when he was a senior at Pitt. I said, look into this guy. He's a good physical downhill runner.
He likes those kind of backs too.
That's what he said. And the draft happens and he goes to the Steelers. I think that's the same year we got Chris Carson, though, so that makes sense.
That's not bad as a consolation. Good call on the Connor, though. He's been a really good player, and boy, he's had a long career for a running back.
This is his, what, 8th year?
I think so, yeah. And he was good last year, too, still, even after he got back off that injury.
Yep, he's going to be someone I'll be looking for in my fantasy league. But that's just me.
I picked him last night. I got him late in my.
I don't know why I said that. Why I said that out loud.
Uh-oh.
Some of the subscribers on this.
Cat's out of the bag, Jose. Your strats out.
Yeah, good grief. Why did I say that out loud? Why?
Or were you just trying to trick him?
Maybe I was. So, what's your outlook for this season? What does it look like to you?
Feel really good about the year. I do. I'd love to hear where you're at with it. No, go ahead.
You were at camp for a couple of days. You saw a little taste of what the team could look like. So I want to hear your thoughts.
I think I was a little more probably bearish on him in the offseason, thinking, okay, it's going to be a year to kind of turn this around, and McDonald's a new coach, and just kind of leaning into what you would historically look at with new coaches coming in, and that it's going to take him a while to get right. But it's been so seamless, it seems like, his transition here, and that it seems like though him and Pete are very different schematically, I think that there's some things that are overlapping between them that will help in the way that they approach, especially competition, that type of thing, and that will allow, I think, for this to go a little bit faster. And it seems the team has picked up both of these complicated sides of the ball really, really quickly as well. So it does feel a little homerish to me, and I always do this, Jose, where I always feel like I get drawn as we get closer and closer to the start date, higher and higher with the final record. But I was at 10 wins before you signed Connor Williams. I thought the Connor Williams signing gave you an extra win because you took what was going to be the weak link of your offensive line, one of the weak links on your offense, and turned it into now a proverbial strength. And if that's the case, is that worth one extra game to me with the way the offense can play within that? I think it is. So I end up landing at 11 wins. I do think, though, Jose, I've said, that great variance there where there is still the new coach. There is still the new systems. This stuff does tend to take a little bit of time. So if this team came out to 7 wins this year at the end of the day, I'm not going to necessarily think that that's a failure because my expectation was that they could win 10 or 11. That's that variance that does exist there. Then I think we all got to be realistic about, because this is just what you tend to walk into with new coaches.
Right.
Where are you at with it?
Well, as I told Brian from Hawks Blogger a couple weeks ago, I basically said what you just said. I was at 10 wins before the Connor Williams signing. And I say 10 because I see us winning 3 of our first 4 games. I see us sweeping the Cardinals, taking 1 from the Rams, possibly taking 1 from the Niners, beating the Giants, who are going to have a top 5 pick, in my opinion, because they did not fix that offensive line, and that quarterback is a disaster, to put it nicely.
I don't think they had 1 touchdown the whole preseason period.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's gonna, I agree with you. I think that they're in that contention for that number 1 pick, which is good because they're definitely out on Daniel Jones.
Yeah. The whole fan base is out on Daniel Jones. Trust me, I know a Giants fan who sometimes my co-host.
Yeah.
Shout out to Scrap Zero.
You feel bad for him, though, but you guys are going to be in for a long one, unfortunately. There's no way 2 ways around it. But, hey, at least they'll be able to go get the best quarterback in next year's draft. That'll be the upside of it.
What do you make of the game against the Jets in New Jersey?
Jets have been interesting. They're all in on getting it this year, and they've done all they can to try to rebuild that offensive line for Rodgers so that they can keep him clean. Because he was under pressure last year and trying to evade the pressure and snap the Achilles, and then you saw pressure was a problem.
It was him wanting to get more yards on 1 play, but
yeah, but I mean, he was leaving. He felt pressure and was trying to extend the play out, and just. But there was an issue with them on pass protection throughout the year. They really reinforced that they drafted Olu Fashanu there out of Penn State, even after they'd signed Tyron Smith from the Dallas to be their left tackle. So they have sort of this backup top 10, 15 pick to basically come in whenever there is that injury at this point. So I think that they've done some interesting things. It does kind of come down, though, doesn't it, Brendan, to the health of Rodgers? And, if he stays healthy, they probably make the playoffs. Huh?
You just called me Brendan.
Oh, I meant Jose. Sorry, my bad. So I think that if he does stay healthy, they make the playoffs because that defense is so good. They'll be able to run the ball with Breece Hall. and they've got enough playmakers for him on the outside to get it done. Where it's a little bit like Stafford, where you're getting these guys a little older, and I think they're going to lean away from the high volume passing attempts and it being a little bit more balanced between run and pass. And all of that, I think, kind of comes together if Rodgers' health can hold to getting them into probably the playoffs in that tough AFC. But that's a big what if, right? Is the health going to hold up for Rodgers, who's gotten pretty old? And last year, I mean, just one wrong step, snap, goes the Achilles. It's like, that's what happens. You get old like that sometimes.
What would I say if I told you I had us beating 3 out of the 4 AFC teams? The Dolphins, the Bills, and the Patriots.
So you have us losing to the Jets?
As of right now, yes.
Oh, that's understandable. I think that's also a game. Isn't that one on the road and 10 a.m. too? I think as well.
In December. December.
I like the fact we get to play Buffalo and Miami at home. I mean, that's really helps in those two matchups, because you think about going on the road in those matchups at 10 a.m. and how hard that is to win in either of those two environments. I mean, if you had Miami in September going on the road, I mean, we'd be out of breath, sweating our butt off throughout the whole game, and that affects things. So I'm glad we got them at home. I think I would probably more Splitville if I was honest with you on that, just because it feels like those are three tough teams in there, and if you can come away with 2 of 3 wins between those 3 teams, because I think the one other, I'm talking Bills, Dolphins, and of course Jets, because I'm not as worried about the fourth on that. But if you go 2-1 against them, I think or 3. I think you go 3-1. Maybe. I don't know on that. I'm more in the Splitsville. I feel like a little bit, because I feel like those will be some tough games. But we got them at home, so I'm a little torn too. Excuse me.
The only NFC North team I see us losing to is the Packers. I'm not worried about the Vikings because of their quarterback situation. I'm not worried about the Bears because Caleb Williams can't stay in the pocket and will go cry to his mother after any play.
True.
Did I say that out loud? Oh well. We've seen the Lions in Detroit 2 years in a row with a worse defensive scheme than we're gonna run this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on the Packers. I have them as I think that they're the number 1 seed in the NFC when it's all said and done. Yeah, I think that's where they're going to be landing at. So I think they are legitimate. I think that's going to be a tough game for us to pull off, and we're have to earn that one. That's for sure.
Now, be honest with me. Am I going crazy? Have I smoked too much opium along with other substances to think that the Seahawks could be a playoff team?
No, I think 10-11 wins is going to definitely get you into the playoffs for sure, if not potentially give you a home playoff game.
Before you continue it, the reason I asked that is because I've told other content creators this, and they've called me crazy.
Well, I think people are, if you're not a Seattle fan, what I tend to find with most content creators or most people out there, that there's some that are the exceptions with this, but it's a little bit like the national media bias that drives our Seahawks fans crazy. Nobody likes it. I hear people bellyache about it a lot, that you're not given the proper respect there from a national perspective. And that does filter on down to national fans then that aren't Seahawks fans. And so this always comes down to me of, people are going to be a bit ignorant. It's not their job to necessarily educate themselves on the Seahawks team or to understand all of the ins and outs on what we do. It's more of one of those things to look at and say, you don't really look very deep at this team. You understand it at a cursory level. And so your opinion to it then isn't really based on anything. And so I shouldn't really give much validity to that opinion, because you're operating from kind of a happy point of ignorance. Now, I know 3 or 4 players on that team. New coach, and that's where I've said this whole bias thing this offseason is not about these media people hating Seattle. It's just about the fact that they're not aware of us. They're not thinking about us. We're Southern Alaska to them. And it's that way for a lot of people. For a fan that's in Miami, Florida, what do they care about a Seattle fan? For a fan that's in Oklahoma, what do they care about the Seattle Seahawks? They're unaware. Half of them are in bed maybe by the time we're playing at times, or they're doing something else. And so it's just, I've seen it pretty much at this point pretty clearly to say that when I tend to unpack those people that have that opinion that we're not going to be good this year, I've yet to see a real smart response back, a well-calibrated argument as to why that's going to be the case, outside of it just being new coach, moving on from Carroll, bad season. It's kind of just where it all kind of comes down to. And I go, that's not really that deep. It's a little deeper than that, right? Your success on what comes up in the upcoming years is not about changing just coaches. It's also about, how good is the talent? Are you in year 3 of a rebuild like we are right now? We didn't start rebuilding this offseason. It was 2 years ago with the Russell Wilson trade. Yeah, so now the fruits of that come forth, right? Now the fruit's been ripening, and now you get to kind of pluck it, new coach or not. Go ahead.
Why did Russell Wilson and John Schneider look like Albert Einstein with that trade?
Perfect timing, perfect trade, one of the best in NFL history. And that's why the confidence is here right now. As you move that trade for one of the best in NFL history, you had all of your picks in addition to that. You had that bountiful amount of picks for 2 years. You grabbed all these good players, and you had good drafts, and good drafts even by the national perspective on this, good drafts. And so you put that together and you go, yeah, why shouldn't I think 2 years down the line after that we start to see the benefits of it? And John moved Russ right when the wheels are about to fall off. And this is part of why we're in the position we're in right now. It's actually a big square part of why we are. It's the change of Coach Carroll, but it's also that trade that allowed you to kind of super inject this rebuild into a faster fashion than you normally would be able to if you're just a team trying to natively get it done.
While you were, I agree with everything you just said. While you were speaking, I was thinking I would like to give credit to a certain content creator that you know very well and who I just spoke to for the first time on Friday, and that is Jesse from Last Second Sports.
Jesse's awesome. Jesse's good people, and he's one of the people that actually is a guy that with national perspective. He's a Niner fan, but he actually has a good understanding of the Hawks and what we're doing, how we're doing it, and he's a lot, I think, fairer in his outlook of us because of that, because he is educated on it.
Yes,
sorry. I got to blow my nose 1 sec here, Jose.
Me and him had a very good conversation.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he does great stuff over there. Jesse?
Yes, he had a call-in show on Friday, and I was afraid to call in, so I typed in the chat. I said, "Are Seahawks fans allowed to call in?" His chat is full of great people, just great people. So shout out to Jesse at Last Second or
Last Second Sports?
Yeah, Last Second Sports. And shout out to everybody that was in that chat.
Does great work over there.
Made me feel welcome.
Yeah, he's good about that.
And shout out to you for always making time to come to the channel.
Anytime, man. I got held up here through the off season a little bit because I was doing that move thing to San Diego here, so it took up a little bit. But
welcome,
thank you.
Welcome back to Cali.
I'm loving it. Loving the weather. Loving being warm and not cold. So it's been really nice. But
you missed the tropical storm last year.
Not missing that, but I definitely not looking forward to tropical storms. That if we get those, I'm going to definitely be like, ugh.
No, there was one last November. The first one in like 80 years or something like that.
Jeez.
It
Goodness.
was it was scary. It was very, very scary. The fact that they were calling it a hurricane was very scary. So
Yeah, don't get too many of those down here. So
thankfully you missed that.
yeah. Yeah. Well, every
Like
place,
you.
every spot in the country's got its own thing. You know, up there in the north, it was forest fires, and you got the snows and the cold, and so there's always kind of something or another going on anywhere you're at. Tornadoes in the Midwest.
Oh, we're missing a special guest. Where's Pumpkin?
I don't know, actually. I don't. She's been laying on the floor. She's so hot today. I think she's just like because it is warm today, so she's just sprawled on the floor like, oh, God, this is too hot.
I think that's what my cat is doing behind me.
Yeah, they like that, especially you got the hardwood floors. I got those here too, so it can be kind of cool on the hardwood floor, when they get that warm. So she's laid out over there.
We went from Let's Talk Hawks to Let's Talk,
It's a natural progression.
but we are both cat owners. And we love our cats,
100%, 100%. I got a good couple of them.
and I got a good one.
Yeah, they're all awesome companions to have.
Just the one. I think I can just handle the one.
Yeah. Well, I got my two by accident. So we got 10 years ago, got this black one. We were in a house. We had mice in the house. We got her as a mouser.
Yeah.
And so then she took to me, this black one did. And so then my former girlfriend said, okay, I want a orange female kitten like I had when I was a young girl. Go find me that in San Diego. So I scoured San Diego, found one.
Yeah.
And then she ended up picking me. So
Yeah.
I ended up with both of them. The ex ended up with none. That's the way that goes, though. The animals pick,
Yeah. And the old phrase is, animals do sense evil. I said that, you didn't.
There you go.
Brand, name one player who people aren't talking about who you think will have a breakout season on both offense and defense.
I think Anthony Bradford is a guy not being spoken about a lot that had a really good preseason and was really impressive to my eyes. He is kind of got everything that you want from a right guard, and that he's big and long and strong, and he's got an attitude to him, and he can maul those big nose tackles at the point of attack. But he's also got the athleticism, and he was a guy, I think, in the 98th percentile as far as his raw athletic score goes. And that speaks to his ability to be a fit in this scheme as well, to move out in space and to climb to the second level and hit reach blocks and those type of things. So he's very universally talented. He was raw coming out and needed some time for that refinement. And I don't know if it's going to fully click this year right now because he had a long way to go. I think he had like 17 starts at the college level. So it's going to come along, I think, though, with him. And I was impressed by what he saw in preseason. And I think that it really bodes well for Seattle if he can lock that down, of course, Jose, because then you free Haynes up to maybe slide over to left guard and really push Lakin over there at left guard if Bradford can settle in there at right. But I think he's the guy not a lot of people are talking about. I thought he had a really good year last year where there was a game last year, even I think the Panthers game, where he was our highest rated offensive player coming out of that Panthers game by PFF. So he's a guy that had those moments of being graded where you were seeing the flashes in certain games. Other games it would be down and you'd get the rough moments where he just kind of lost a little bit. But that's what you're going to get with a rough, raw prospect like that, a project. And I think that he's going to come forward this year. Don't know if I'll get see Pro Bowler, but turn into a solid starter for you there at right guard.
What about the defensive?
Ooh, defense.
If you can't think of someone, I have someone.
I think Mike Morris is a guy that's impressed me a lot in the preseason, and Mike McDonald seems to have a really good plan for him. I don't think it's if a Mafe or a Derek Hall, people are kind of starting to think that these guys are going to be guys to take that. So that's not as much of a surprise, I think. But I think I do go to what I've seen from Mike Morris, and he'll be a rotational guy, but I think he'll do a lot with that rotation. I think he'll make the most of his snaps.
Can I give you my 2 breakout players?
Yeah, hit me up.
On the offense, I'm going to go with the Yak King, LaVisca Chenault Jr.
I like that one.
And on defense, I'm going to give you former Oklahoma Sooner second corner, 30th corner, Trey Brown.
I like that one too.
On the opposite side of Tariq Woolen.
Trey playing for a contract. Yeah, you always like that. And I think another guy last year, man, who had moments. Sorry to interrupt you. Another guy last year that had some moments there where he was getting close to looking like it was going to lock in. My comp for him has always been sort of the DJ Reed kid that we had for a while, who was able to really have a good final season with us and propel himself to a big contract with the Jets, and he's played well for the Jets. Similar size dimensions, similar kind of game in the way that they play it. I think that's a good pick, and I love LaVisca, man. He's going to just be so efficient with the touches he gets. He's not going to necessarily have a high volume amount either on the runs or the catches, but you'll come out of probably just about every game with 40 to 60 yards collectively between the rushing and the passing, and it'll help the team out.
Now, before we go, let's talk about everyone's favorite Seahawk, and I say that very sarcastically. Jason Myers. Will he miss over or under 6 field goal attempts this year?
Oh, I think he's going to make them actually this year, because what you can do with them, Jose, is of course you can track him like you were tracking a calendar. As the months turn over, you can track the same thing with Jason Myers on his great to bad years. And let's remember with it is that though he is every other year on a clock bad, every other year of that is then he's great. Not merely good, he's usually great. So it usually goes great, bad, great, bad, great, bad.
It's like every odd year.
It's every odd year. So he's due for a great year. And let's face it, I know that preseason got people nervous with the 2 missed PATs, but he made every single other kick that he attempted throughout preseason.
It didn't get me nervous. It got me angry.
Hey, I get it. You're spending this kind of money for a kicker. You don't want to spend money on money. You don't want to spend money on kickers, but if you're going to spend money on kickers, you really want to make sure the returns are coming, that you're feeling like, I'm getting something back for that.
And do you see any possible votes for Byron Murphy for Defensive Rookie of the Year?
I think he can put a performance up that's deserving of it, but I think that Tariq Woolen put up a performance that was deserving of it a couple of years ago too, and he didn't win it. So it comes down to, do I think he can win it on putting up a season that's worthwhile and worthy of being, yes. Do I think the national media, like we talked about just a few minutes ago about that bias, and again, it's one that does make Hawk fans mad, but it's a reality of life. It's like gravity, Jose. What goes up must come down. There's an East Coast bias. Therefore, winning awards for Seahawks players is really not something that's likely to happen. Coach Carroll never won Coach of the Year. John Schneider's never won General Manager of the Year. For you to get an MVP on your books throughout the history of your team, for you to have an MVP on your books, the one MVP you've had on your books in 50 years here in Seattle, is a guy who had to set NFL records in order to get that MVP win. So it's to me, when I come down to awards and all of that and making any prediction on any player, I would say it to you like this, Jose. Really, we really should just count on the fact that we're not going to win awards. We might get to Pro Bowls. We might get all pros. We're not getting awards, though. And a Hawk fans definitely get caught up on, is this guy going to get the comeback this good? And I know Gino got the comeback player of the year, but that was because he made it much in the same way where it was like undeniable. You had to give it to him. If you didn't give it to Gino, it was like, who are you giving it to? Who's the alternative here for what the year he just put up? And so it's got to be that kind of year. Murphy what I'm saying, Jose, is Murphy would have to go out and be 50 tackles, 11 sacks. It's more going to be like 30 tackles, 7.5 sacks. Now, should that be enough even in that point to probably win out? Yeah, it should, especially getting that production from the inside. But then that media bias comes in my opinion, on this one and says, no, we'll give it to, who's one of the other defensive players?
Jared Verse.
Yeah, something like that. Jared Verse, because Verse will have 10 sacks, or Jared, Verse, not even Verse. I'd say let me go more of an East Coast team like I'm totally spacing on it because we had 14 straight offensive. Like I guess like Letu gets 9, 10 sacks or something, or 11 sacks off the edge for the Colts or something. I think that there would still be a little bit more towards that. So you have to really dominate out there to get it, is what I'm kind of saying. Like it has to be like you win it, you do enough to win it, and then you got to need to add like 15% on top of that if you're a Hawk player to win the award. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he's got the talent, man. He's ready. He looks keyed up to do it, and he's going to have a role here. But maybe I'm just getting bitter about it, Jose. I watched these through the years with so many awards that slip through the fingers essentially, and you go, how does John Schneider not just 2 years ago with that Russell Wilson trade coming out the other end of that and how he looks with it, and then having a playoff team and his trust in Gino rewarded and having the how do you not win it that year? It's like, what more does the guy got to do on his end of it to prove his worthwhile on that? On top of the draft he had with it, Jose, remember the great draft, one of the greatest drafts in NFL history on top of the trade. Doesn't move the general manager award needle in the least for the national sports writers on that. So I'm probably a little bitter about this, but I do lean to say that we're not getting awards unless we're dominating from a positional standpoint or something like that.
I do have 2 more.
You're good, man. I'm chilling, so we're all good.
All right, I just wanted to make sure you're at the time.
Oh, we're good. Yeah, totally.
The year the Seahawks drafted Walter Jones.
What was that now?
The year the Seahawks drafted Walter Jones.
Mm-hmm. It was 97.
What year?
I think it was 97.
How did we get 2 top 10 picks?
Oh, you had the trade of, I believe it was the Rick Meyer trade. So I actually had Randy Mueller on my channel. I was able to talk to him about this very trade and how it was done. And what happened there is that Rick Meyer was a guy you drafted as the number 2 overall pick. That was Drew Bledsoe of Washington State, was out in that same draft. And so you took Meyer. He had a first good rookie year, and then he kind of fell apart a little bit.
I actually met Meyer.
Oh, yeah. He's a good guy, supposedly, too. And Mueller was very praising of Meyer. But what he was able to do is he kind of pulled one over on Chicago, because he went to Chicago, and the general manager of Chicago was a Notre Dame alum. And Rick Meyer went to Notre Dame.
Yes, I know.
So you got a little bit of this, like, able to kind of like work off of that a little bit on him. And so they were able to flip that then and make that happen at that point. Funny enough, Mueller said Meyer's people actually insisted that the Hawks gave something back to the Bears, like a 3rd round pick back, so that it wasn't such a bad PR look then when he was coming to Chicago that he costed him this 1st round pick. It wasn't the team insisting on the 3rd round pick back. It was the player going to the team insisting on the 3rd round pick back, which I found pretty hilarious. But you pulled the wool over their eyes, and they had a bad season, and you had a great pick on the other end of it because of it. And Walter was he was a transfer from the community college, so he didn't have the 4 years at a big program getting it done. So it was a little bit of that. Okay, he's amazingly talented, but we only have this one season to kind of go off of with the guy, and so it was a little bit of a roll of the dice. But the talent was just so good.
All right. Thank you for that history.
Oh yeah, I had a ball talking to former Seahawks GM. Like, if I could ever get John, like, there's so many questions you can just kind of get into with some of that stuff. It's just,
I wish I could ask him a couple questions. myself. Maybe one day in the future I will. With
Maybe at some
you.
point.
I'm, I'm getting great guests. I got Brian from my brother. I got you. Now, let's see who's next in the in the pipeline. But my last question: What
Mhm.
what do you do with Geno Smith?
I don't do the contract extension right now. I know that that's what he's wanting. I would, to me, this is a year of evaluation. And this is something that's a commonality that you get with a new coach most places where you walk in. I mean, when Pete first walked in the door, for instance, was there some changeover initially? Yes, but that first year was more about kind of evaluating what he had. And then the changes came after that. And then there was more of a,
Actually,
okay,
I have an insight on one of those shades that was made. That I think I can tell the story without getting in trouble. At least I hope this doesn't get anyone in trouble. But when Pete Carroll first had a meeting with some of the players, one of the players in that meeting was DJ Hushmanzada. And according to Pete Carroll, because the same day, this was reported by John claimed that, oh, the Seahawks are looking into Shaw Johnson was the same day I happened to meet Pete Carroll. And I was sitting right next to him and I asked him, so John Clayton is reporting that you guys are looking into Chad Johnson. And he told me, yeah, TJ Hushmanzada gave me Chad's number and he took the card and told Chad, I know his number. I know his number, 85, right? And within the next week, TJ was traded. Or within the next month,
mm-hmm.
TJ was traded. So that's how much Pete Carroll cared about TJ's opinion on who he wanted.
Yeah, you're gonna lay down the law at times and make a statement, and that's gonna resonate with the players. And a new coach is gonna come down and he's got to.
I hope that doesn't get anyone in trouble. But
No, it's a known story out there. It's been I've heard it a couple times mentioned out there. So it's just, but that's a new, as much as TJ acting out, that was much of just Carroll taking an opportunity to drop the hammer down so that people understand that there's an authority figure here, that this, okay, I'm a player friendly coach. I'm a nice guy. I'm very positive. But if you're not going to do what I need you to be doing, I will move on in a heartbeat from you. And that's a bit of what I think Pete had there walking. And I think that's a little bit, I'd offer a bit of what maybe was lost with Pete when we got through 10 years of him here. I don't know if he was as much in trying to make those kind of statements to players, and that allowed for a little bit of a loosey-goosey environment at times, especially when it came to discipline and, being held accountable. I think that stuff got a little bit lost there with time, but that's what you got to do as a coach. You come in, you got to, establish your authority.
The first sign of trouble was after week 1 when he stepped up to the podium and he said, I could not get my guys fired up for this game. I had to do a double take. I said,
Yeah.
Did you just say that out loud?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not,
We've always,
something that makes you look good as a coach.
no. And, the schematic stuff with Pete was always something that was going to limit you a little bit, but you could overcome it because there was the good things Pete brought to the table as a motivator of getting the buy-in. And that was always a part you never had to question. And that was indeed, I think you're right, something that you started to have to question last year for the first time, and right after the first game of the season. And you're right, he said that I didn't have him ready to play. How do you not have and it drove me crazy. How do you not have your players ready to play for the first game of the NFL season? The adrenaline should be through the nines. You should be, everybody should be hyped up. Like you should have to do very little as a coach at that point to have those guys ready. Maybe week 5, 6. when they're tired and their bodies are wore down, okay, it's harder to get them motivated. But week one at home, first game of the season, I couldn't quite get that one myself, Jose, and it bothered me as well. And I think this is where we get to why Pete moved on, is that it was no new thing to ownership, the schematic stuff not being at top notch, but the not being able to motivate players and not being able to get the buy-in from players. You got them smoking cigars after that last game in the locker room, like they had won something or done something. It was a horrible look at the time, but again, an indicator and a sign that something was wrong. Huh?
Julian Love did bite the bullet for that.
That was BS. His answer on it was BS. Yeah, he tried to cover up afterwards and say, but he had his baby the prior week. They should have smoked in the Titans locker room if that's what was going on. I don't buy it. I think that was damage control.
Yeah, I agree. Back to Gino though.
Oh, Gino, it's a wait and see season from so many things. It's a wait and see season for DK Metcalf. Does DK Metcalf go out there and get you 1,500 yards? Then do you want to pay DK Metcalf on a $35 million deal? Does Gino go out there this year and put 4,600 yards up and 35 passing touchdowns? And then you're looking at, okay, do we want to make him a $50 million guy? This is very heavily into the place of guessing, Jose. I do think that John wants to have this be the wait and see season, and that includes Gino with it. And that a lot of how Gino plays is going to determine which way this goes, but then also what Gino's going to insist upon as far as a contract extension goes. You get through the end of this year and he does 4,600 yards and 35 touchdowns, and he wants $50 million. I'm not sure that John wants to sign up for that for a quarterback going into his mid-30s. My estimation on that would be probably, if you're going to insist on being paid that high, we'll move you for a second-round pick and call it a day. I think John's trying to avoid that. I think that he was really inhibited by the Russell Wilson contract through the years, and it kind of drove him, I think, a little crazy in his ability to roster build with it. And I don't think he wants to get himself back into that same pickle. And based off of what we're hearing from Gino right now and wanting an extension right now, doesn't seem like we're going to be getting a discount in the future if we do end up waiting. And so my estimation on that is going to play out kind of like that.
Now, let's just play hypothetical GM for a minute. If Gino goes and has a great year, and let's say the Seahawks get to the playoffs, win a game, and Gino wants to be one of the highest quarterbacks in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, you have the Cowboys franchise Dak Prescott, and they call the Seahawks and say, hey, we want Geno Smith and a second round pick, and you can deal with Dak. And
well, Dak's a free agent after the year.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so would you rather have Dak or Geno?
I mean, if we're talking in both players' cases, we're probably talking here over $50 million a year, Jose. And I think that both of, because it's going to be that's the cost. So I think
or do you think a flyer on somehow?
I don't believe in paying a quarterback $50 million unless you have a difference maker. I think there's only about 5 difference makers at the quarterback position in the NFL at the top, and that might even be a little bit high. And while I do like Geno Smith, and I think Dak Prescott is a functional quarterback, I don't think that they're worthy of the $50 million range of things. So when we come down to that, I would be in the boat of saying what I'd rather do is utilize the model of 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we built up a super team. We got the line in place. We got all the parts in place. You brought in the quarterback, and then the quarterback didn't have to be a difference maker. He had some difference-making things he could do from a physical standpoint, especially scrambling and moving around and the deep ball. But you didn't need him to be a top 5 quarterback. You didn't even need to be a top 10 quarterback in the sport and how he played necessarily. Maybe he was right on that line of being close to there, but I don't think he was even in the first 2 years quite at that spot. So you go out and you take the same road. Okay, you move Geno for a second, you build up some more draft capital, you have Sam Howell here, you draft another quarterback, you put him in on a competition, you let him fight it out. You trust the fact that I'm taking these young quarterbacks and I'm giving them such a great environment to work within that they're going to flourish from that. And I've given, and I know as you've seen on my channel many times, I've given a lot of examples of this all across the board where you can see this in point, where you can see when the supporting cast is there, what it allows the quarterback to do when it's removed, what then happens to that quarterback, and then how teams also then, Jose, get themselves tricked into paying quarterbacks that they think are that guy when they really shouldn't. They really should have just stuck to their model. The Eagles with Jalen Hurts. I mean, do you think they love that contract that they gave him now a year? The Dolphins with two, and I don't think they're going to like that contract that they gave out, but they just decide that they have to pay rather than looking at it creatively. And that's where I think John, there's a market opportunity for him to take this different route, not take the route of what everybody else is doing, not going with the herd, taking this little bit of this different route and then utilizing it. And it's, look, 10 years ago, you got to back-to-back Super Bowls doing this. You're paying Russell, I think, less than 1% of the cap in his first year and like 1.3% in his second year. So why not use that model again, especially when you have the same general manager in place, especially when you have a lot of the same even staff in that building in the same kind of place. Let's do it again.
Not to change topics, but
you're good.
I think the Dolphins are really, really messed up when it comes to that Tua contract because he is one injury away from retirement.
Agreed.
And then you give him all this money, all this bonus to sit in Hawaii, back home. Why you paying? And your team struggles badly. I just don't think it was a great deal for the Dolphins.
No, I don't think so either. But I think that's the majority of these contracts given out now to these quarterbacks, Jose, is I don't think that they're good deals down the line. I think teams just get lazy and they get scared and they don't have another option for a different quarterback. And they just get stuck in the fact that, well, if we sign him, everybody will like you sign the quarterback, everybody's like, oh, you have to sign him. So they good move. Like they automatically kind of get a rubber stamp. That was a good move when they signed it. I know you and me on this one are hitting the Dolphins for it, but look at the national perspective on it. Listen to the national talking voices and they'll be like, oh, it's a good signing. You have to sign Tua. You have to sign this guy. You have to sign Brock Purdy next year, $55 million. You got to sign him. He's earned it. You've got to sign him. And it's this automatic response to that position that you see over and over again from teams. And that's why I say this is a market opportunity. You have teams that are making a mistake over and over universally across the board. You can be the team to not make that same mistake and then really benefit from that and really be able to, in my opinion, have that zigging where everybody else is zagging. And then it makes that much more stronger because you're one of the few teams actually taking a bit of that approach to it. So I've been on this trip for a while with it. And I think there's a strong argument to be made. Quarterback contracts get funnier and funnier and funnier every year we go along here. And that just drives me more into the realm of find the value, build the super team around the guy and then get him in here. Get a couple guys in the mix like we might have. Let them compete at that point. It doesn't just have to be this magical messianic like quarterback that everybody's looking for, that's got the golden rays coming behind him and he's floating down from on high or something. It's like, get the guy that's functional back there and good, and he can take you very far.
I agree. Well, then, thank you for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, Jose.
Oh.
I'm sorry it took me so long to get out here on this on the side of it.
One last thing. Where do you see us ending up in our division?
Well, I know we're a minimum third. I have had us in third place through a lot of the offseason because I have liked what the Rams are doing. But I've got to say that with Donald retiring, they just had yesterday, I'm sure you saw, they allowed Ernest Jones to seek a trade because they don't want to sign him to a contract extension. And
that's a smart move.
Yeah, I Was smart move to trade him? He's been a good player for them. Ernest Jones, the inside linebacker.
He's an inside linebacker.
Yeah.
Inside linebacker?
But they're you heard that news, right?
Yes.
They grounded him. He could trade. So
Yeah.
that makes him weaker, though. If they move him, right? Like your inside linebacker position is now going to be weaker this season if that does get granted. And we'll see if it does, but if the actual trade is consummated. But that would be the one place I would say I'm kind of not sure yet whether or not I want to put us into second place or third place on that one. I think, too, with Stafford and the health side of it. Can that hold up for a full year there with him? But they're good, and they were good last year, and I counted them out last year, and they came back and got in the playoffs and, almost won a playoff game. So I don't know. I'm kind of right there on the line with that one, Jose. I really am.
I have it second in the division.
Let's go.
For right now. And if and this is a big if Ayuk gets traded, I see us winning the division.
There we go. I love it, man.
I said if, Jesse. I didn't say win. I said if.
Well, and even if they do sign that guy back in at this point, you're now into August 26th here, Jose, and Brandon Ayuk has not practiced one day for the San Francisco 49ers. You're August 26th, and Trent Williams has not practiced one day. Another holdout that remains for that team. And even if those guys do return, we've had a history of this we've seen in the past where guys that miss all of training camp and then go out there and try to play for a full season, the numbers are not in their favor as far as the health holding up. Huh?
Dwayne Brown.
Yeah, exactly.
Jamal Adams.
That's right. It's not a guy missed a little bit of training camp, and did that affect him potentially? I don't know. But it does. There is some good statistical stuff on the show, and guys that don't get through training camp or out there, you miss it. You didn't try to get out there and go. It's hard to just have the body go from 0 to 100 miles an hour and expect that it's just going to be able to handle that. That's why you have those training camps, and you're slowly building the body up to prepare it and get it right. And I know Trent's working out and Brendan's working out, but you can't replicate practice by just doing the workouts. You need practice.
Yes, I agree. Brandon, before we end this, please tell people where they can find you.
You can find me here on the Hawks Nest on YouTube. So just type in the Hawks Nest and should pop right on up.
And if you want to speak to him on Twitter or X or
oh yeah, at Seahawks Nester on X.
Whatever Elon is calling that app nowadays.
Exactly. I'm bad about it with the Twitter, but I'm also only half the time on there, so YouTube's enough.
Yes, it is. Tell people, thank you for watching.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate you, Jose, for having me on here.
People, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Go about to Brandon at the Hawks Nest. His link is in the description. Until next time. God first, God bless, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and always remember, go Hawks!
Go Hawks!
We're out. Peace.